Hello, everyone. Teacher Angela here with Tamika. Tamika is actually someone I helped get through the hiring process back in October, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
cool. And since starting with VIPKID, Tamika has been very successful, and she's also started a very successful Facebook group called VIPKID Teachers of Color. That's
Yes.
what it's called, right?
Yep.
Cool. Because of some recent events that I've seen on Facebook, and because I do a lot of referring, I wanted to shed some light on how teachers of colors do in VIPKID. There was a video that went around the VIPKID circles of a teacher who taught a student who had never seen a Black person before. And the student's reaction was kind of scared at first, I guess. She called her a
Yeah.
monster.
Yeah.
And this teacher handled it so professionally and beautifully. But this really ignited that conversation about how Black teachers do, if, I guess a lot of questions about that. Because I refer so much and a lot of applicants ask me these questions, I'm not exactly qualified to speak on behalf of teachers of color. Tamika is going to give us insights from her Facebook group on the success of teachers of color with VIPKID. So we're going to start at the beginning of the process and just kind of go through and talk about some of the questions that I've gotten or some concerns that people have had. So applying in general, I get a lot of questions when people reach out to me saying, I'd love to apply, but will they hire me? I'm Black. Is there, inherent racism there that they won't hire me because I'm Black? What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah. So that's something that we've definitely discussed within the group as well. And like when I created the group, I created it with the intention of addressing the reactions from students. So it never even occurred to me that people might be concerned about whether or not the company would even hire them. So that was definitely like an interesting dynamic to discuss. Obviously, there are many teachers of color. Yes, like in terms of like the diversity of teachers, it is on the lower scale, which is another thing that I observed, which is why I started this group. Because I definitely wanted to give teachers of color a community to kind of bond and address the things that they were seeing, especially as teachers. Just come to find that there are a lot more of us than we ever even knew or fathomed. Yeah. So we are being hired. It's definitely possible. I think that the hiring process for VIPKID is difficult and it's stringent to begin with, but I do not think that it in any way negates teachers of color or those that come from different backgrounds or different experiences.
Yeah, they don't discriminate. And then as far as once you get hired, so the process with VIPKID, since we're hired as independent contractors, we are responsible for getting our own bookings. Like every teacher sets up a profile, and that's how parents book teachers. So in your Facebook group, did you talk about, setting up the profile? Were teachers worried about how to present themselves to parents in order to get booked?
Yeah. So that was definitely an ongoing conversation, especially because like it's specifically for Black people, we tend to be perceived as more aggressive. So you definitely want your pictures and your profile to be well lit. You want to have like a big smile. You want to be earthy. You want to be relatable. I think that we need to put a lot more work, especially into our profile video, to show our personality and to show who we are in the classroom. And every teacher has to take these measures. Every teacher has to create a profile that they feel will best appeal to parents. But a Black face in a sea of white faces, although we do stick out, I feel like we have to be just a little bit more of everything in order to make the right impression. For example, my pictures are very much happy-go-lucky. Like my profile picture is me in the classroom with like a puppet and makeup on my face, even though I don't wear makeup like every day. It's not an everyday thing for me.
I don't either.
Yeah, and I'm certainly not wearing it at 5 a.m. when I teach in the morning.
I don't either.
But like there was this impression that like students want kind of like the blonde hair, blue-eyed, like white teacher. And then there was another conversation in regards to like red lipstick and what that says to parents. So especially as a teacher of color, you don't want to seem less than because you don't have a little bit of makeup on your face or because you don't have a little bit of red lipstick. So I think that those conversations, depending on like what demographic, are a little bit more in depth. So that makes just applying and creating your profile just a little bit different.
Yeah.
At least for us. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
A lot more thought goes into it. Like the little things that you may not think about, like what color lipstick you're wearing, is like a big conversation for teachers of color.
Okay, interesting. Yeah. Okay, thank you. And I'll just add that I did notice when I went to China, and I couldn't speak to this before I went, that I did notice that at least the demographic that VIP Kid caters to is higher in society than the majority of the population, and
Yes.
their standards of beauty do cater to like people with white skin. Like
Yep.
they wear like on every corner there was like medical cosmetic, like and
Yeah.
they have whiteners in their lotion. But when talking to people about my age in there, they said the cultural revolution in the 80s that happened in China has completely changed like the generations. Like there's such a big difference between the little kids who are doing VIP Kid, like they
Yeah.
speak better English than their parents, and their
Yeah.
parents are very different than their own parents. Like each
Yeah.
generation is so different, you know. So what's important to the grandparents is different than the
Mhm.
parents, which is going to be different than the kids. So it's super important that they do these, that teachers of
Yeah.
color aren't discouraged. The video that Bia shared, the student said that she'd never seen someone with a brown face before. And she said, "You're ugly." The student said, "You're ugly." And she said, "I'm not ugly. I am not ugly. And I'm
Yeah.
so happy to be your first brown face. Can we be friends?" And by the end, they've become friends.
Yeah.
And I think another thing that happened when I was in China is we met with the ambassador to China, which is really cool. Like we went to the embassy, and he was
Wow.
talking about how, you know, as an ambassador, he had a good experience with the president of China back when he was like a governor. And it's because he like had a good experience that Donald Trump made him the ambassador, because it is personal experiences that shape our ideas about people. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So the president had such a favorable impression of the ambassador back in the day that they made him ambassador now
Yeah.
because they had a good relationship. So these early experiences that these students have with Black teachers can totally shape their
Yeah.
mindset. You know,
Very true.
it's so important that as little kids they're learning, oh, she's not a monster, there's nothing
Yeah.
different about her. There's you know, it doesn't matter if her skin is brown or her hair is blonde or her
Figured.
it doesn't
Yeah.
that has nothing to do with her quality as an individual or a human. So
Yeah,
it's
you're
super
completely right.
important, you know.
And we have those conversations, especially like in the Teachers of Color group, because we're not only tasked with teaching English, by default, we're also tasked with teaching diversity,
Yeah.
simply by existing. And so that makes our lessons a little bit more complex and a little bit more involved, especially like my students. I have regular students who love to see my different hairstyles. My hair never looks the same for a long period of time. And sometimes as a Black woman, like especially on the bad hair days, like I have to keep a bonnet on or like I'm gonna look crazy. So like explaining to my students, especially the older students, why my hair grows up to the sky instead of growing down my back. Being able to have fun conversations with my little ones about like my hair grows up to the sun because it wants to touch the sun. Just something as
Oh,
simple as that creates such an amazing bridge and connection between us because they are still children and
yeah.
children do think very simplistically. So my saying my hair grows up to the sun, to them it's like, wow, that's amazing. Like
Yeah.
your hair wants to touch the sun. I want to touch the sun one day. And then the conversation completely changes.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, I mean, and colorism exists in every race.
Yeah.
Um, it exists in Asia. It exists in America. It exists within the Black community. We struggle with our own colorism in ways where there's a conversation between lighter skin and darker skin. So it exists everywhere. And I think that if for any teacher of color, especially when approaching this company, the best thing for you to approach it with is a mindset that my same difficulties that I exist as a person of color, the same difficulties that I may face are the same difficulties that I will face here. And it's not anyone being inherently racist. It legitimately is the sense that these children just have never seen you. And all they really know is what they learn from the media.
Yeah. They're kids. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So what they absorb is what they're getting from outside sources, but you have the opportunity to really be something absolutely amazing to them. And I treat them the same way I would treat any other child here. Like
Yeah.
there are small children here that say like outrageous things in America. Like children are children. They're very honest. They're very like say what's on their mind. Like they're the same no matter where they are.
Yeah.
But it's up to you, especially as an educator and as an adult, to reshape and reframe their direction and how they see you, especially in terms of skin color.
Yeah. So can you talk about some experiences teachers in your group have had dealing with
Yeah.
with kids who have never seen a Black person before?
Yeah. So as you know, like in VIP Kid, the parents essentially choose us. So we had ongoing conversations as to whether or not parents are choosing us because they want their child to have more exposure to people of color. Because obviously the parent knows what we look like because we have a whole profile.
Yeah.
But sometimes you still get that shocked expression from students. And then there's the concept of maybe subbing or teaching a trial class where the student or parent definitely doesn't know what you look like until you pop up on the screen. So we've talked about like what are the differences between this? Why are parents choosing us in comparison to our white counterparts? Obviously, there has to be like that first student in order for you to start having regular students.
Yeah.
Some teachers have encountered students that cry immediately on site, which is painful because
Wow.
they're children and you want to make them feel better. But how can you make them feel better when it's legitimately just how you look? That's scaring them. Some teachers have had students like call them things like doo-doo or like, like it's less of the inherently racist comments and more of the comparing you to things that are not positive.
Yeah.
In a way. So then how do you not only support the student through them struggling to acknowledge like who you are and your skin color, but there's also like an emotional component that goes with that. Like, how do you support yourself at the same time? How do you, because you are taken aback and you're in a place where you're like, oh my God, wow, like I really just surprised this student so much that they said something, inherently
Yeah.
negative. But it's like a 50-50 scale. How do you support yourself and emotionally get through the trauma of another negative experience in regards to your skin color? But at the same time, how do you make this a dynamic moment for the
Yeah.
student?
It's a balance.
Yeah. And like, especially with the younger students, it's definitely a partnership with the parents. Like when the parents do book us, it's because the parents want us to be their teacher. So sometimes it's a partnership with the parent. The parent will pick them up and sit them on their lap and sit them in front of the computer. And once you get started talking with a puppet or making noises and they realize that you're just as fun as teacher Angela, you're just as fun as like any other teacher, it fades away. And eventually your skin color isn't even a topic of conversation. I've been lucky enough to not have to have that conversation. The conversation is always surrounding my hair. And my hair is the way it is because I'm Black.
They just love your hair.
Yep,
Your
they
hair is
do.
beautiful.
Yeah, thank you. So it's usually like you have really long hair, teacher Tamika, like, or like I've had a student say like your hair, like when I have like long braids, your hair looks like octopus tentacles, and like, yeah, like I'll hold it up and make like a weird like octopus tentacle movement. Yeah, and like it's fun and it's engaging, and it doesn't have to be this intentional, deep conversation.
Yeah.
But once you give them that comfort, it literally like it's not something that is going to repeat with the same student. So the
Yeah.
chances of you repeating that same interaction with that student again after you've gotten through that one difficult part is really low.
Well, I mean, that's not what anyone signs up for. I mean, you
Yeah.
sign up to teach English. So like you said, go into this job knowing that these kids probably haven't seen, assume that they haven't seen a Black person before, and you might have to have that conversation, prepare yourself for it, but turn it into a teaching experience,
Yeah.
cultural, but only to an extent. Have you had anyone tell you about support from the company, support from VIP Kid when they've had experiences like that? Because at some point, exactly, you got to take care of yourself. You're doing this to make money. This is your job. At what point has the company stepped in and intervened or offered support? Have you had any teachers share experiences like that?
As far as I know, especially like if a situation is ongoing while you're in the classroom, you can definitely call the firemen. They'll definitely it's a behavioral issue, and we speak on it as such. Has there been an official word from the company? No. There still is such a small percentage of teachers of color that it might seem like such a small issue to a company that's essentially 95% white. So that might be a thing, but in the moment, I have not heard of a teacher who has had a negative interaction with firemen, especially with a student that's having an ongoing behavioral issue.
Yeah.
Albeit because of your skin color or because of something else.
Yeah.
So that's definitely great. Like when it comes to acknowledging things, like the teachers of color, especially those in the group, like we advocate for ourselves. We send in tickets all the time. Like, hey, can we have diversity programming? Can we do a workshop where we discuss like not only what it's like to be a teacher of color with the company, but also like what are some of the cultural aspects of like Chinese students, and why do they react the way that they do to us? Like, we would love to be able to sit down and have a conversation with headquarters and just say, like, tell me about your country and your students and their upbringing. Help me understand why these interactions are going this way. So we're definitely trying to create a movement.
And have you heard back from VIPKID about
Unfortunately, it's just been like we're working on it, like that's a great idea, we'll let you know kind of thing.
Maybe this video will help too, because I think that's
hope
important.
So.
I think that's important too. That'd be a helpful workshop.
Yeah.
I mean, I would love to be able to tell referrals, yes, they will hire you. Yes, you'll be successful. Yes, they have programs specifically for teachers of color, because China is a very homogenous community.
Yes.
Even when I was there, one of my students was talking about my daughter, and I showed the mom a picture, and she said, she has green eyes, and she looked at her daughter and said, can you even imagine? I mean, it's not even just Black people. They're just a very homogenous community. Yep. And so I think it would be super helpful to be able to tell applicants, yeah, there's a lot of support, because that is going to be part of your job. It is, you're going to have to deal with these situations, but we've got you,
I agree.
So yeah, let's hope we can make progress in that. So what other questions, what other insights did you get from your Facebook group?
Yeah, so one of the questions that got the most comments was, what do you think teachers of color should know before they apply, which is kind of going hand in hand with our discussion thus far. So is there anything that teachers of color specifically should know before they even decide to apply? And this was one of the questions that I had to put kind of a small disclaimer on, because it can get very intense very quickly.
Okay.
So we have teachers who are discussing the issues with getting bookings, and the issue with getting bookings is all around. There's no evidence that it's prejudice against teachers of color. There are definitely teachers of other races and demographics who are experiencing the same things.
Yeah.
So that was definitely an ongoing conversation in trying to, but all of this is essentially from my point of view. As a very involved teacher who's involved in the Facebook groups and oversees a Facebook group, from my point of view, it's not isolating one demographic for the most part. So that was definitely an interesting conversation to have. But one of the conversations that kept coming up was, are we educated by the company around the issue of race and how Asian students see race or anything different from them to begin with? And that also affects teachers of color in a different way, because a big thing for us is wearing things like headdresses and head wraps. And these are a lot of cultural aspects. And one of the teachers mentioned that in one of her workshops, she was told that these things are not allowed, which makes complete sense. In a company, a lot of the time, companies tend to dictate how they want you to look. Our orange shirt are definitely a signature of the company. But when it is a cultural aspect of your being, is it realistic, especially as independent contractors, to be told that we cannot wear head wraps? Or if we have a Muslim teacher and she's wearing a hijab, is that something that will be denounced? So having those progressive conversations and discussing where does this take us? Where does this lead us? Because we're not employees. So essentially we can't really dictate or be dictated to as to what we should be wearing.
And as far as policy goes, we aren't required to wear orange shirts. I don't think they can tell us. No, I mean, they can recommend it strong. They strongly recommend things, but at the same time, you want to comply with things a company strongly recommends doing or not doing. So
exactly. And none of these are ever things that are mandated by the company.
Yeah.
But perception is reality.
Yeah.
So if the perception is that head wraps mean something, or they or maybe parents or students are uncomfortable with seeing head wraps or hijabs or things like that, these are more integral conversations that we need to be having.
Exactly.
Because if it's creating the impression that that is not professional, maybe we should start having workshops that discuss how race and culture affect us as teachers, but also affect how we teach and the dynamic that we have between us and our students.
Yeah. And part of teacher Bia's conversation with her student in that interaction where she hadn't seen a Black teacher before, she said, well, I am from America, and in America we have people of every color, and so I think we always talk about how especially around Christmas or certain holidays, or when a student sneezes, do we say bless you? You know, there's
Yeah.
all these questions. And then the consensus usually always comes to, we're supposed to be teaching them also culturally what's appropriate and what's
Yeah.
normal here. You know what I mean? So if we're consistent with that teaching ideology, then absolutely you should be able to wear whatever is culturally appropriate for you. You know, there should not be any strong recommendations one way or the other. If that's
Yeah.
what we're supposed to be teaching, it's a culture in America. So
No, you're definitely right.
that should be part of a workshop, or whatever program they set up, for
Yeah,
sure.
for sure. Like, I completely agree. One of my regular students, conversation that we've had, and she's a level 4 student, so conversations are imminent.
Yeah.
It's been an ongoing conversation because one day she asked, like, where are you from? And America, that's the right answer.
Yeah.
And she was like, where in America? And because I interact with this young lady, like, literally maybe twice or 3 times a week. I see her almost every other day. I was like, yeah, like, teacher lives in Philadelphia, but teacher grew up in New York. And then to backtrack a little bit, like, teacher's not actually from America. Teacher is from Haiti. And we discussed, like, the Caribbean and all the other different places in the world. Because VIPKID also does have lessons that teaches about life in other countries.
Yeah.
We have lessons that talk about life in India, and we have lessons that talk about life in, Europe and China. So why shouldn't I have a conversation with my student that says, yeah, like, America is just everyone from all over the country, like all over the world, excuse me, that literally just all ended up here. And we all share our space and we all grow and learn together, but we're all Americans because we're here now.
Exactly.
And what it means to be Americans and things like that.
Yeah. Amen. Exactly. Okay. Awesome. Anything else from your Facebook group conversations?
Yeah. So another question, and again, these are some things that, like, literally come up even in conversations about how we view professionalism in America. So one of the questions that I asked on March 1st was, what makes you most insecure or worried about being a teacher of color with VIPKID? And some of the teachers who have not had negative experiences are dreading the day that they one day do, which is something that even I dread because I have been so lucky to not have a negative experience with a student. Another concept that was brought up that was definitely interesting was like locks, like sister locks or like dreadlocks, and being like, what does that mean culturally to people who are outside of the Black community? And some teachers and some teachers have turned to wearing wigs, wigs with like long black hair, and buying wigs because, again, like, this is our profession and we want to be successful. And for some teachers, it's like, if buying a wig is what I have to do in order for a student to feel like they can trust me, in order to continue booking with me, then that's what I have to do. And then on the flip side, there are other teachers that are like, no, like, I'm going to 100% authentically be myself at all times, and the bookings will come.
Yeah.
So there are some teachers that are on 2 very different sides of the coin. Some teachers are like, I'm going to play the game. And then there are other teachers that are just like, no, like, this is me. This is 100% authentically me. And
I'm an independent contractor, so
yeah, exactly.
I get to be myself,
I think especially with being a person of color, the concern is less with the community and more with the reaction.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to be unsuccessful. And our success is solely determined by our bookings and parents that want to book us and want their children to be taught by us. So a lot of the conversation is, how are we appealing to parents? How are students seeing us? What is the conversation around that? So for teachers of color, it's less that it's less that they don't trust the company, and more so that, like, they want to be that.
Yeah. And how to be successful.
Yeah,
Okay.
for sure.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. Awesome. Any last words that you want to share?
No, this was awesome.
Yeah.
I think that especially for
Super
teachers
insightful.
of color. Yeah. I think that especially for teachers of color, because we in the teachers of color group are so diverse ourselves.
Yeah.
I have teachers who are Black. I have teachers who are Indian. I have teachers who are Asian. And we each struggle in a small way just by being against the norm of what a VIPKID teacher would look like. But the company has shown us that they are hearing us. We are seeing more ads with teachers of color. Teachers of color are now being asked to do more. I am thankful to have been chosen as a Jack Ma
You
rural
are?
education project
I
teacher.
didn't know that. That's
Yes.
awesome.
Thank
Oh, that
you.
is so cool. Good for
And
you.
I'm so excited because, you know, looking at the handful of teachers that were chosen last semester, there were no teachers of color. And now there's two.
Progress.
Yeah, and there might be more. I mean, like some teachers aren't on Facebook,
Yeah.
but to find community in that way.
Yeah. And how many people are in your Facebook group?
We have about 800 or 900 people in the
Okay.
Facebook group so far. And
Awesome.
it grows every day. I get
Yeah.
at least 10 to 15 requests every day.
Awesome. And I'll put
Which
the
is
link to
amazing.
that in the description for this video.
Yeah.
So if anyone has any questions, I'll put your referral link also. If anyone wants to apply and have Tamika help you get hired, you can use her link below and you can request to join her group if you have any questions. I'll just direct you all to her because obviously she's the one who's set up this Facebook group and has all this accumulation of experiences to share. I just wanted to use my platform to share this information because I thought it was super important. The conversation's been had on Facebook and a lot of random places, and I wanted it somewhere where, you know, anyone can find it and find this information. So you can contact Tamika below. But awesome. Okay, thank you so much. This was super helpful. I'm glad that you've become so successful. Back in October when you were so nervous and
I know.
I was looking through our emails in November, you were like, I slept in, I got my first no-show. Like, it's okay, relax. This is
and
like
here I am on my way to like my second contract.
Exactly.
And I love it. It's amazing.
You've been super successful and you've helped tons of people get hired and be successful. So awesome. Awesome. Awesome.